did this issue of swatting start? I mean, this is something I didn't hear of until, I don't know, a couple years ago. Am I misremembering here? But it seems like this is something. And explain what it is.
Yeah, I think it started probably beyond that. Probably 5 or 6 years ago is when we saw a real uptick. But it's essentially calling in a false report in order to antagonize or irritate somebody and cause a huge public safety response to go to a location. And if that's your home and you have cops and firemen and ambulances and everything around your home, you can get hurt.
Yeah.
Because these public safety agencies are all running code 3, lights and siren, and the chances for accidents can go up with that with the general public. So it's done generally as a prank to people, but it can get very serious and ultimately could cost somebody their life.
Well, Bret, I remember watching something, and again, I've watched a lot of these documentaries on Netflix or something, and there was an instance back east, I think. It was gamers or hackers or something, and they called it on someone else. Anyway, long story short, it resulted in somebody died in the shooting. And I think about if you get swatted and somebody's doing it for obviously nefarious reasons, to the prank on you or to make your life a living hell. You got all the other folks, the people in the house, the police, the sheriffs, first responders, whatever, or their lives are put at risk. And I think about somebody, maybe there's something going on in the fog of night. And, if a lot of households are like my household, we're also armed too. And you don't know what's going on. I mean, it's dangerous.
Sure. And a lot of times, when law enforcement responds to a swatting type call or a major incident, it could be that they respond not in uniform. It could be plainclothes officers responding as well. So that adds an element of danger to that response. The sheriff mentioned, the code 3 response with lights and sirens. There's speeds involved that could cause a danger to people, either pedestrians or other people on the roadway. Like today here in Flagstaff, you see the snow out and the ice on the roads. That adds another element of danger to it. But the swatting calls can also be used to shift resources of law enforcement to other areas so that people can commit crimes, say, in other areas and sit and watch and see what that response is like.
Okay.
So,
yeah, that makes like a Die Hard with a Vengeance
Sure.
type thing. You remember that movie where they were robbing the Federal Reserve or the bank downtown and they caused the whole subway explode? I didn't even think about that, but yeah, you get everybody, because you guys have limited, whether it's you guys, whether it's Flag PD, whether it's DPS, limited resources, obviously. I don't know what the ratio is between citizen and law enforcement, but I imagine it's quite low.
It is. It's never really enough because depending on where the incident happens, how big it is, the response, especially for an active type shooter, is going to be really everybody goes.
Is the swatting thing where somebody's calling in and saying, well, I saw Billy next door and he's got a gun and do they do things like that? Or what have you guys seen have you had to deal with that here in Coconino County, or what are you hearing from your colleagues if that's not the case, if you're not having to deal with it? What are these pranksters or whatever calling in on?
Fortunately, we haven't had one like that.
Okay.
But we do occasionally get the bomb threat. Or there's a problem at this residence and unknown problem with an unknown subject, and you don't know what you're going to.
Yeah.
And you're not able to obtain additional information, or the dispatcher's not. So again, you're on edge going, and you don't know what to encounter. So you just hope that whatever it is, it doesn't pose a threat to you or anybody else as you're responding. But we don't see a lot of it, thankfully. But it doesn't take very much to do one of these kinds of calls, though.
Yeah, it doesn't. And then what is how hard is it to catch these people when it does happen? How hard is it to track them down? And sometimes this can be even foreign stuff, I've heard, where people are using all different kinds of servers and this and that. I mean, how hard is it to find these people?
Depending on the technology that they use, it can be very difficult. It's no different than people that do scamming or fraudulent phone calls that you might get over the phone.
Yeah.
They have a sophisticated network that they'll use that really at this point in time, it's difficult for us to track down.
Let me bridge into another subject that, since you just mentioned scam phone calls, because I see notifications from Coconino County Sheriff's Office. I see it from Yavapai, et cetera, et cetera. Hey, there's this latest scam going on. People are calling on whatever, right? And to me, I'm thinking, how does anybody fall for this at this point? Who are they targeting though? Is that still working where people are doing the phone scams, text scams?
It absolutely is. In fact, we've got a new class we just put together, and we're actually rolling it out to all of our senior centers in the county. So we just, in fact, gave one last week to our Flagstaff Senior Center. And I think the biggest draw to that, to answer your question, is the AI. So through technology, they can actually mimic family members' voices, call them on the phone, especially to seniors. They're one of our vulnerable groups for several reasons. But they'll it'll be a call placed from what they think is their grandchild, who might say something like, "I'm in jail, I'm in Mexico, I need money." And there's several indicators that come out through that call that would indicate to someone that might be a little bit more savvy that that's a fraudulent call. But these folks are making a lot of money doing this, and they're not going to stop as long as they're making the money. They can make it.
Yeah, I think I do remember something a few months back down in the Phoenix area where somebody called and the mom got on the phone and the daughter's voice, and I've been kidnapped or something like that, right? And she finally got some key words that she's like, wait, something sounds off. But I think about it. I know you have kids. You have kids. And I think about, like, if I got a call and it was in the voice of your children or your grandchildren or whatever, oh man. I mean, it would, I just, how do you even train and prepare for that? Even when you're younger, but then if they're targeting seniors and maybe more vulnerable populations, is that what who they go after? Or is it just a random barrage of?
Sure. Well, they have to do, if they're using that AI, they need a little bit of background to be able to find that information that they need. They try to get as much as they can on the victim, and then use it against them. So it's a real common thing right now, and something that we are really having to focus on as far as.
And then we're putting everything out there. Everybody's got their whole life story
on social
media, right?
Yes.
This is what I ate last night. This is what I did. Blah blah blah. Right. And it's like, so it becomes easy to figure it out. I think we had it dialed in 1999 with technology. I'm going to say, let's go back to that and just slow it on down. Is there any legislation? I know, and we'll get to more legislation. You guys have been going down to the Capitol, I guess, to lobby for certain things or to maybe lobby against certain things. Is there any discussion at the state level on the AI issue?
There's a lot on AI.
Okay.
And to be specific, we couldn't give that today.
Yeah.
But there's some legislation about swatting. Where there's a proposed bill right now to make swatting a Class 6 felony.
What does that mean for
It means you get convicted of a felony, you can go to prison.
Is that the highest level?
No, Class 1 is the highest.
Okay, Class
level,
1 is.
But a Class 6 is still punishable by time in prison.
It's kind of surprising that isn't like in there now. I mean, like it's a
misdemeanor right now.
Oh yeah, that needs to change. I'm not a big law guy. Like we need a new law on top of another law. But if there's nothing on the books, because we didn't really know about this stuff not too long ago, and using AI, in the effort of doing that swatting type thing, even you'd think they'd come up with something.
Well, in addition to the criminal penalty, they're also looking at as part of this bill, a civil penalty to charge that person for the cost of the response.
Okay.
The Anti-Defamation League just finished a study on what swatting costs, and they looked at Arizona, and it ranged from about $800 to as much as $10,000 per swatting call.
So it depends on the response.
Depends on the level of response, how many, what happened. Any accidents associated with it, and the cost to the various government agencies as well as to schools, because schools, churches were getting the swatting calls as well, so they suffered a financial loss as well.
Amazing, yeah, and I think even like a doubling of that, say the cost of plus something. So active legislation on that, on that issue, but the AI issue we're not sure yet because this is still really new.
Yeah, there's so much AI going on. And again, there's a number of bills dealing with AI, and it would really take hours to get into all of them.
I think we need something where you can't use someone's likeness, because again, we didn't anticipate this kind of stuff, and there has to be something put in place. And that's the legislative side. I know you guys are the enforcement side, but still, I think it's going to get worse. I don't think it's going to get worse and worse. They're going to use this more and more. Yes. And then you might see issues with especially younger folks, and social media is such quite frankly, a problem on younger side, peer pressure, all of that stuff. I don't know if you guys are seeing an increase in instances of social media issues with youngsters. I mean, are you getting calls where crazy stuff are happening?
Well, a big part of social media goes right back to that mental health issue as well. You got, cyberbullying is what they'll call it, or just a lot of harassment going on through social media. Yeah. Anymore, you don't have to go to school to find a friend in person.
Yeah, that's
now
true.
Your whole identity is, like you said, it's out there on social media, but unfortunately that opens you up to criminal activity as well as being basically verbally abused online.
Yeah, I would say keep your kids away from that. That's my advice. Keep your kids away from social media. I mean, as best as it's hard because then there's the pressure there. I got my daughter a phone that you just can't get on it. On the phone. So it's just something each parent's going to have to make that decision. All right, let's get into the fentanyl issues. I want to get into the 2024 election. Like I said, some search and rescue issues as well. And if you got any comments, always love hearing from you. Talk with Jeff at iCloud.com. All right, welcome back. Your comments always welcome. Here with Coconino County Sheriff Jim Driscoll, Chief Deputy Sheriff Bret Axlund as well. How's the? I know the answer to this, but how's the fentanyl issue going?
Well,
I mean,
it is ever present.
Yeah.
We get weekly and monthly statistics that come in. Half of the fentanyl coming into the United States is coming across the Arizona border from Mexico.
Half for the U.S.
For the entire country is coming through Arizona. And it's everywhere. My colleagues down in southern Arizona, the sheriffs down there, every day, they're getting loads of it. They're having the mules that are forced to haul it across in backpacks across the border. It's absolutely out of control.
Yeah.
And they're constantly, we've sent our own people down there to provide some assistance, some of our deputies, and deputies from throughout the state have gone down there just to assist on the border.
Bret, you're seeing this every day as well. I saw an article, Montana's being pushed into now in a big way by the cartels, and you think of Montana, you think rural as rural can be, but Coconino County is that too. There's outside of Flagstaff area, you guys are dealing with the second largest geographic size county in the nation, but there's a lot of spaces between people and there's a lot of distance that you have to go. What are you seeing though, as far as the fentanyl? How's that popping up when you're, and especially with your deputies out there?
Right. Well, just our location, by nature, being on at the intersection of Interstate 40 and Interstate 17.
Yeah,
that's a major thoroughfare to the rest of the country. So we're seeing a lot of it come up through there. Unfortunately, it also filters then into our neighborhoods in our communities. So,
yeah,
we are asked all the time, how are you locally combating that? And we are, our answer is the best way, the most effective way for us to go after the drugs is through undercover work.
Okay.
So we use that to identify, where it's coming from, where it's at, and we do have a multi-agency narcotics task force that does address that. We also have recently put in a canine unit, which is been very effective in locating these drugs as they come through. They'll operate off of tips. They'll operate off of just skills that they've picked up on the interstates as well as our roadways. But, make no mistake, the drugs don't just go through. There are quite a bit that actually land here and cause death.
Yeah, so
really, you got fentanyl is dangerous. You've heard the campaigns that come out. One pill can kill. and the others. But really, realistically, this is a situation where one pill can cause the death of someone.
Yeah, so you're dealing with the transport issue being 17 and 40, and you're saying half the drugs in the fentanyl in the country is coming to Arizona. So I imagine, I'm sure some of it's going out in 10 and 8 and et cetera, but a lot of it's floating through northern Arizona at massive amounts that we probably couldn't even imagine, because I would imagine you're only getting a tiny percentage of this stuff.
Yeah, we think so too.
Yeah.
Yes, we don't. Most of it gets through, and you can't stop every car. You can't, pull over every truck and search. We have rules, laws that we need to follow as well. But it is certainly a crisis, and it is getting worse, it seems, by the day.
What action do you see coming? Because, you've been going down to the Arizona legislature. I don't know what more laws you can put in on something like fentanyl. Is there something, what's going on there?
I think you're right. I think we have the laws in place. It's just the resources to enforce the laws. Mm-hmm. And everyone is stretched thin. We've talked before about how hard it is to recruit and retain law enforcement officers now, and this is all part of it. And less resources means less bad guys going to jail.
And I'm guessing the cartels probably have more resources than you guys.
They certainly have more money.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. It's probably how is you and I spent maybe last year some time talking about retention. When you've got northern Arizona that's quite expensive in a lot of areas, and we've talked about how DPS and other places you can get more pay. People can go down to Phoenix, even though Phoenix has gotten a lot more expensive than it used to be, but it's cheaper than Flagstaff. It's cheaper than, Williams and other areas in northern Arizona. How has retention been in attracting new deputies and so on and so forth, retaining them and getting new ones?
Well, recently we put together a team actually that's made up of some of our younger officers to ask them, what drew you to this job? Because let's face it, when we were hired, decades ago, the reasons were different why we were attracted to this job.
Yeah.
So, this team has gotten together, come up with a lot of different marketing ideas, which have been really effective. In addition to that, the state's looking at it. You talked about the legislature a little bit, but the state has put together a legislative advisory committee work group, which I've been nominated to be on by the Arizona Sheriff's Association. And this is a group that has used all three universities in the state to study why aren't people either coming to this profession or staying in the profession. So they're in the midst of the study right now. They're putting out the executive reports, but I think the results are coming out as we expected. It's pay, mm-hmm. It's the demands of the job, it's public perception of law enforcement as a whole. So all those things really work against us. So we just need to find a way to turn those around. And for us, we've been very successful in one division. But in, say, in our detention division, we're still struggling, as is the rest of the state and the rest of the country.
Yeah, and Bret Axlund's with us, Chief Deputy Sheriff of Coconino County, Sheriff Jim Driscoll, Coconino County Sheriff Jim Driscoll as well. Bret, how, and Jim, we've talked about this in the past, especially during 2020, for example, all the issues that law enforcement dealt with and the public perception issue, it was brutal. And I think it's been hard to get people to get into a profession where, people are shouting at you and people are, every police officer, every sheriff is bad. And I know that's not the case. There was a couple bad apples that have happened in law enforcement, and we acknowledge that. I'm sure you guys can. That happens. And then you want to root them out. But that perception for some has still persisted, although I see some cities that were going the defund law enforcement have realized the idiocy of that with massive crime rates, especially over in California. Is it changing? Either one of you guys take this one. Is that perception changing? That, hey, we actually need law enforcement,
Yeah, and I think we've worked so hard at that public trust and that community support that I think it affected us quite a bit less than it may have other departments across not just our nation but our state as well. I'll tell you a story about a comment that we got from the Northern Arizona University Police Chief, Missy Freshour. She called us a few months ago and says, "Hey, your deputies responded to the death of a family member lived in Coconino Village, and when they responded, it was just a natural death, and they dealt with the family inside the home." And even though there wasn't much for the deputies to do, they stopped, they took a time out, and they asked the family, "Is there anything else that we can help you with?" And this goes back to culture of what you know, what you learn. And the folks says, nothing that you could help us with, but we just need to feed our horses. And the horses were at a remote location. And the deputy said, "Well, let us help you with that." They went and they fed the horses. They came back, the word got out, and it got to the NAU police chief. The NAU police chief then goes to her own people and says, "We have a new saying at our office here. And anytime somebody talks about, not wanting to do something or getting into a discussion about what is your job and what isn't your job," she says, "we now say, just go feed the horses." So nice. kind of a neat compliment, I think, to our folks. But, expectations are that we help in any way that we can.
Yeah, and I think that's true across the board in different areas of the country as well, big cities too. But I think it's especially prevalent, especially when you're in smaller communities.
I think so. Yeah, like Bret mentioned, we focus so much on public trust. We cannot be successful if we don't have the trust of the public. And he's right. We did not, I think, suffer the effects of the defund movement like other places. Yeah. We work very hard we work for our community. We exist to serve our community. And so we focus every day on both enforcement as well as service and maintaining that balance. And that's important, I think, for all law enforcement to focus on.
Okay, let's come back and talk. There's a mental health crisis going on. I want to hit on that. Plus, we'll talk about the 2024 election. Bret Axlund's with us, as well as Jim Driscoll. Comments always welcome. Talk with Jeff at iCloud.com. All right, here with Coconino County Sheriff Jim Driscoll, Chief Deputy Sheriff Bret Axlund. Hit on a lot already. There's definitely a mental health crisis going on in this country. Suicides, all kinds of issues that you're seeing in the streets. I think that you're maybe seeing pop up in the news too in different clips, and you're like, wow, how does this happen? What's going on in society, right? You guys have been dealing, Bret. You've dealt with, and have you dealt with an increase in suicides in Northern Arizona?
Yeah, absolutely. It used to be years ago that we would go to 1 or 2 a week, and now it's 1 or 2 a shift.
Oh,
and unfortunately, these are completed suicides. So it's really it's a difficult thing, I think, for not just the families, but it's a difficult thing for our deputies and our staff to go out and have to deal with these things on a daily basis, because no matter what happens through that discussion, through that communication that we have, they make a connection in some way to those folks. So while we are having to deal with it through education in our communities, we're also having to offer assistance to our own staff members that have to go through this.
Oh, we'll have to deal with the after effects of all that, and on such more frequent basis that you're seeing. Now, Bret, you've been in this, and you mentioned earlier, hey, it's changed, over time. How long have you been in law enforcement?
So I just hit my 28th year with the Coconino Sheriff's Office.
Okay.
I started as a detention officer in the old jail downtown.
Oh, wow.
Was able to promote to deputy, worked up in the Page Lake Powell area for 20 years, and then was asked to be the chief deputy by our current sheriff back in 2017. So I've been here since then.
Okay, so all those years you've been doing this, have you ever seen it like this as far as, let's go back to the mental health crisis, suicide issues? Have you ever seen it like this?
I haven't, and it's caused us as an agency, as an organization, to come to terms with how do we now address it with what we have control or what we have influence over. We've got, communities out there that need help. So what the sheriff has done is started or has volunteered our folks to help out with mental health first aid instruction. I was able to serve with him on the Stronger as One executive committee, which is a group that addresses mental health in our communities. We have begun teaching that class in our jail, but also to every single employee at our office. So it's a heavy lift, but it's something that we've seen needs to be a priority.
That's dealing with the issues. So how do you do that, Bill? Because I think of law enforcement. It's like, okay, when you signed up for this 28 years ago, when you signed up for this, you don't want to say.
It's decades now.
Decades ago, when he was 19 or so. Yeah. But anyway, no, when you signed up for this probably wasn't even in like, oh, I got to deal with this issue. Or, I mean, there's been drugs around. There's probably more of dealing with maybe meth and things like that back then. But I mean, how do you, and going back to recruiting, how do you even attract people when all of a sudden it's like, well, I just want to be in law enforcement. I don't want to be like a social worker, right. I guess. Right.
And I think, expectations have changed. And when we talk about changes in law enforcement, it changes daily. It can change daily as far as what's needed from our officers that respond to people. So depending on what's needed by our communities, and it's different throughout, community to community, even within our own county, we have to have our folks trained up to be able to adequately respond to that and be successful.
Yeah. Yeah. It's changed a lot though over your time, right, Sheriff?
It used to be about enforcement and service, but now we've become de facto social workers. We have to help parents parent their kids. We have to help elderly many times deal with some of the problems that Bret mentioned earlier. We have to help families deal with internal problems, and then you add in the sex trafficking. You add in the bullying, the cyberbullying that Bret talked about. We end up responding to so many different kinds of calls that are not law enforcement, but who else do you call?
Yeah, whole nother world to deal with. Are there any other legislation issues that you guys are looking at and trying to get changed here in the state?
Yeah, there's another a bill to reinstate a defined benefits program for our detention officers. They lost their pension system back in 2018. They just lost it to vote by the legislature. So we as sheriffs met Monday night in Phoenix with the legislature and testified that we're trying to get that pension system back to our detention officers, which will allow us to recruit and retain these officers. It gives them, when we have probation officers and our civilian staff that have a pension system, why not our detention officers? So
because you guys get the defined benefit, and
yes.
The detention switched to defined contribution, where they have to put in
a different system. It's primarily a 401k based, but they lost their beneficial pension system.
Okay,
and we're trying to work with the legislature to get that reestablished, and it's going to take our boards of supervisors support as well throughout Arizona.
Budgeting issue, and because you guys also, the sheriff's office runs the jail. Am I right on that?
Yes.
Right.
Which houses people for the city of Flagstaff. Give me the rundown on that.
All law enforcement agencies in the county book into our jail.
So Page,
federal, state, city, municipal, and county.
So you're running all of that.
We have it all.
There must be a retention issue for jail guard workers. What's the word I'm looking for?
Right, detention officers.
Detention officers. Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you. It slips over time, So detention officers must be a hard retention issue, even over deputies, I would imagine.
Yes, we don't. The average we get a year or a little bit more.
Oh, really?
And they move on because there's no light at the end of the tunnel.
Yeah.
So if we can reestablish that viable pension system for them, we know it will contribute to retention.
Yeah. Okay. Well, good luck. It's this time of year and dealing with the legislature. I have them on all the time, so you know how that can, all the hundreds and hundreds of bills that they're hearing at this point.
Yeah, there were, I think, 1,300 as of yesterday.
And maybe 300 become law in the end, something like that. Uh-huh. Okay, on to the 2024 election. You are running, Bret, for to replace Sheriff Jim Driscoll, who's I think you were voted like best sheriff or something. Wasn't there something that came out? I'm going to embarrass him now. What was that? I'll ask you.
So I'll talk about it since we know he won't. Last year he was really honored by the Western States Sheriff's Association. So you're talking about a group of 17 states.
Yeah.
4,000 counties.
Wow.
So you're talking about a whole lot of counties, and each year they nominate and vote for one Sheriff of the Year. And through his years and accomplishments, they had a meeting and decided that he was going to be the recipient of that award. So
good for you.
No other sheriff in Coconino County has ever achieved that. And, we get the benefit of it.
Yeah. Well, good for you.
Once in a while I get it right.
Yeah. So. Well, go on a high note here, right? Yeah. And you're endorsing Bret to in the 2024 election to become Coconino's next sheriff.
Absolutely.
Okay. So, and
he will be a great sheriff.
Yeah. And you're that means a lot. And I'll just be plain spoken here. There's I didn't vote for a lot of Democrats the last cycle when you were on there, and not to bring politics and all this, but I did vote for Sheriff Driscoll. So that says a lot there. So, and you're running, Coconino County is a very Democrat heavy county when it comes to the politics of it all. I am kind of surprised though. Are you, in all the years you've been doing this, Jim, why do we even have, I understand why we have an election, because you guys are in a unique position, unlike like police chiefs and this and that. When it comes to certain issues, I mean, especially constitutional issues, you can really step up. You're your own person when you're elected to be sheriff, and you can be that. You're directly connected with the people of the county.
I think the sheriff is the closest elected official that we have throughout the counties in the United States. You can elect a sheriff, you can unelect a sheriff pretty easily.
Yeah.
Depending on the job that they do. And so answering directly to the people, not through a council or a board or other representatives, that direct access, and your people are out there every day in those communities and being evaluated and servicing their community. And that's why I think being a sheriff is one of the greatest jobs in the world.
Yeah.
And as I look to my chief here, I know he will do a phenomenal job, and he just has the right mindset to do it.
Yeah, good. And I am surprised though that it's even a political, like I get the election side, but there's certain positions that you're like judges, things like that. You're like, why do we even have the political side to this? But it is what it is.
We take an oath of office to be impartial and to serve everyone.
Yeah.
And that's what it's about, not partisanship, not this group or special interest group or that group. It's everyone in the county, and if you do it right, you keep getting reelected.
Well, yeah, and quite frankly, you said 4,000 counties or whatever the number is.
There's about. That's nationwide.
Yeah. Okay.
So we're talking 400, I think.
The Western. Well, a lot of counties.
A lot.
I would imagine that there's a lot of Democrat sheriffs and a lot of Republican sheriffs in that bag of folks throughout the West. So that's a great honor there, and I'm glad you've been serving. Thank you for your service. So you want to step in? What triggered you here to do it?
Really, it was just the need, I think, to keep the direction going that it's going. For 6.5 years, I've really had the honor and the blessing to be mentored by the Sheriff of the Year. So it's been an incredible journey. Learning new things every single day, but learning the job of the sheriff. I mean, it's something that I think you have to have. You have to have a background. You have to have the experience in it and the education to be able to be successful in this type of a position.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, well, here's what I'll do. I'll put a link in the podcast. It'll come out here later for your site as well. And we'll hope to have you back on at least one more time before the election coming up.
Right.
You do have a primary coming up, but there's no other primary challenger, I believe, as of yet.
Right.
Okay.
Correct.
So, and then on to the general election. Sheriff Driscoll, I hope we get you on at least one more time before you head off to go archery hunting, fishing, whatever else is on your camping, the bucket list. And Sheriff Driscoll's the reason why I found that great place up in Montana in
Glacier,
and some great places up
Avalanche
there.
Lake.
Avalanche Lake. It's a picture upstairs framed up that we all took up there. Beautiful place, although it's gotten busy there.
It has. They all
busy.
have. And I still get up a lot. I get to Yellowstone quite a bit to fish too.
Yeah. Awesome places. So enjoy all that, but we'll look forward to having you back on. Sheriff Driscoll, I appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you.
Chief Deputy Sheriff Bret Axlund, appreciate it as well. Best wishes to you in the election coming up.
Great, thank you.
Thanks for watching this video. Thank you to everyone listening on the podcast as well. Do me a favor right now. Please subscribe. I appreciate everybody that's doing it. Subscribe, and share with your friends. If you've already done that, leave a comment. That helps us out a lot, and we'll see you back here real soon.